This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is mine.
Hello, William. Welcome to the happy hour. It's still happy if it's on the weekend, right? Even if it's not like a work day.
Well,
I
every
think
day's
so.
a happy day.
It's a happy day whenever. All right.
A happy day
Cheers.
with you, Joann.
Oh, thank you,
Cheers to
William.
you.
That's sweet.
Cheers to you. Cheers to the people.
May your consent to be governed never be taken for granted.
Well, we'll start off with that.
Well, stop. Well, our consent. Well, cheers. So here we
What do you have
are.
for us tonight?
Well, we are the plane's coming in for a landing. We're like not far from the runway in this election. We got another week and change before the big day, although a lot of people have voted and already voted. I've already voted. I mailed my ballot in, and what was fun is that you could put a QR code on your phone and you could track your ballot. So it gives you little text messages like, hey, your ballot's at the post office. Your ballot's being delivered to the registrar. Your ballot has been delivered. Thank you for voting.
Wow,
pretty nice.
that's good.
So, the mechanisms in our democracy seem to be, doing their hard little work. And then we've got, on your doorstep every day, there's more and more campaign materials. Even had somebody knock on my door today, even though I'm not in a swing state. So campaigning is in high gear. They were knocking on my door from a local campaign because, of course, we've been talking all about the presidential campaign, but there's lots of other things going on in this election locally and propositions and all kinds of things. So the energy's in the air, William. I can feel it.
Well, it is the most monumental election perhaps in the history of our nation. Of course, you can say that every 4 years almost.
We've heard that
But
a few times now.
I think we're really getting down to it. This is going to be a very close election, and
yeah.
I think anyone who tries to predict it is just really whistling in the wind.
Yeah. And it's also, it's not just the presidency, it's also, the Congress. It's just so close in Congress as well. And that's really going to have implications for whoever gets elected, big implications.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is back to what we've been talking about recently is whoever is elected, these are just some really major things that are going on. These two major regional escalating wars, the Ukraine war we talked about last week, and this week we were possibly going to talk about the Israel-Palestine war, the Palestinian war, and
which in the last few days, they've attacked, or I guess people are, the way it's being said is that they've retaliated against Iran for Iran's attack from, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? I can't recall
right
already. Yeah. And that was just the last few days that's happened. So, the Middle East is, in my memory, since I've been alive, it's the worst I've seen in terms of like the amount of unrest and the uncertainty and the fact that there's a war happening now, a full-blown war, really. It been occurring in the Middle East now for a while, and it's expanding. With the Lebanon piece and the Iran piece, clearly. And I don't. It's not clear to me how we get to a resolution of that in the immediate future. And it definitely is having its impact on the presidential election, especially, with the vote in Michigan hanging in the balance because of how close the votes are in that state, and the fact that there's a fairly, decent, Arab contingent there that is either going to withhold their vote for the Democrats or vote for Trump potentially, that could really swing that swing state. So, it's got huge implications for our political process and our the outcome of this election.
Well, it's almost it's almost biblical in its proportions in terms of Armageddon. That's is in the book of Revelations, says that the great battle will be fought out there,
Yeah.
at Armageddon, and in a way, you have that potentiality of what is taking place becoming a nuclear war, because Israel, the belligerent nation, here essentially, in terms of its outreach. In other words, it strikes against Iran, its direct strikes against Iran, not just in what took place in the last day or so by demonstrating its ability to take out missile systems along the way so that it can get its planes in close enough to launch its air launched missiles directly into Iran airspace like they did. Now, that's a demonstration, but it's a very expensive demonstration. These are all very, very expensive weapons that are being shot off on both sides. But so this isn't the kind of war that can just be sustained. You don't have those kinds of factories turning out these highly complicated weapons like that, if at all. But it is a new kind of war that is threatening nuclear war. I mean, that's the real threat, on both sides, because if Iran, let's suppose then that Iran takes this attack, this most recent attack, then perhaps they view it as being more successful than their attack on Israel was a few weeks back, a month or so back, which was mostly shot down,
Yeah.
almost. Almost 97%, I think, or almost of 200 some odd missiles that were shot over, cruise missiles or whatever, in whatever form, were all shot down, one form or another. Maybe this attack on Iran was more successful. I don't know how successful it was, but whether it was or it wasn't, it's just this opening up of this new kind of war in a more direct way. This is really war. I mean,
Not just proxy battles.
this isn't targeted assassinations that Israel has been using for many years, where no matter where you are in the world, they will target your assassination as a matter of national policy. They demonstrate this over and over again. And now they're doing that in a very more precise way in their war, particularly into Lebanon, where they're going into this country, into this urban areas of the city areas with these bombs, and very heavy duty bombs, and killing off the Hezbollah leadership in Lebanon.
But I mean, what do we expect? I mean, they've been Hezbollah has been firing rockets into northern Israel for a long time. I mean, like now, ever since over the past year, and killing people, and they've had to evacuate that whole part of the country. So, I think we have to point out that these are to some extent retaliatory measures that Israel has been taking, both against Hezbollah and Iran.
So what, it's not the purpose of us here to do this, to roll back the clock, as it were. Retaliation here, retaliation there, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and roll it all the way back, to whatever beginning you may want to take it to. But somewhere it has to end. That this just can't just keep going on, and that's true all over the world, particularly where it involves nuclear weapons.
Yeah, because escalation is inevitable, right? I mean, if this keeps going on, there's only, I think, in some ways, looking at the Israeli government, the only thing that is keeping them in check in any respect with regard to nuclear weapons is us. I mean, like, our government is trying to rein them in, and I think that if they were to use a nuclear weapon, they would know that they would really estrange us, who's the source of a lot of these weapons for them. So, but I don't trust the government of Bibi Netanyahu to exercise restraint with nukes. I mean, I think without any, unless we are trying to keep them on a leash. I mean,
No,
and
no,
and
no. There is nothing in Israel's policy that takes anything into consideration of the United States more than whether it affects or it favors or disfavors their policy.
Mhm.
That's the only real consideration that is ever takes place regarding any decision that gets made. And
So
it's
that's
not just this government, but particularly this government, because Netanyahu is so blatant about his use of the United States and how
mhm.
he can get away and do whatever he wants to do.
Except so far using nukes,
Yeah.
because I, I'm I'm not what is the calculus for Israel around the use of a nuclear weapon? I That's the question for me that I don't know. Especially with this current government in Israel, what would it be? What would be the thing that would keep them from using it? And I don't see anything else except for us. But I mean, maybe there's other calculations at play. But right now, Iran, as far as I know, doesn't have full capability with nukes the way that Israel does. We suspect Israel does, or there's been enough confirmation on different levels that Israel does. So right now would be more of if you're thinking about it strategically, you would want to actually use the weapon before your opponent has full facility with the same weapon.
Well, yeah, but this all assumes that Israel, I'm sorry, that Iran is going to develop its own weapon. So there are other avenues of obtaining nuclear weapons, and it doesn't even have to be a strategic nuclear weapon. It can be a tactical nuclear weapon from the stockpiles of the former Soviet Union, which are just over its border from Iran. And keep in mind that Iran has a business deal going with Russia right now, providing it with its drones.
Mm.
Those are Iranian drones, and so how more difficult would it be to get a bomb from there, or
Well, if you're gonna,
or is Iran improving its relationships with Pakistan, and there you have the
mm,
Islamic bomb right over its border, which is under fairly tenuous control as it is
yeah,
in
the
that
Pakistan,
country.
totally,
Who
yeah.
controls the nuclear weapons of Pakistan on any given day? It's not nobody's really sure. And so I'm just saying that nuclear weapons are there, and for the asking for the sale, and it's all of that, which I think is the existential fear of Israel, is that really it would only take a couple to eliminate Israel as a
Hmm.
it really just isn't. It's not a whole lot larger than LA County when you get right down to it.
Right, right, yeah. So I think the question for me is well, these are all really fascinating geopolitical questions, but in the realm of the election, which is just over a week away, how influential is the whole situation in the Middle East on how people are actually going to vote? I'm not convinced that that's a number one election issue for a lot of people, but given how close we've just talked about this election is going to be, it may be influential enough in certain places, right, for it to shift the outcome. What do you think?
Well, that's like another question, though, in a
Mm-hmm.
way, away from the Middle East. I think that if we're looking at who the next president might be, whether it is Harris or Trump, and how they will be dealing with the Middle East question, I think that what you would find is an elected Trump would be really emboldened to just let Israel go.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just for a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of them are transactional, from his own
Mhm.
monetary dealings with some of his supporters and the things that he's doing. Uh, and also because it also gets more complicated, with the relationships with Saudi Arabia and their interest in how this turns out vis-a-vis Iran. This is this whole area, the whole the politics of the area are complicated and go back for millennia. Um, uh,
Yeah.
and
But do
and
you think people, when they're voting, are really thinking through that piece of things? I mean, I think that,
no, not really.
yeah.
And in terms of how people are thinking about the Middle East, I think they kind of think of it as probably more business as usual. I mean,
Hmm.
they've been watching something going on in Israel one way or another for our lifetime, really. And
Yeah, but
and
this is
I
pretty bad.
yeah,
This is,
but I
you know,
but I mean the media is really uh I don't know to what extent that this carnage is being frontline reported. I mean, now they're going after Al Jazeera's journalists as saying they're basically enemies, uh, you know, and targeting them. Others are acknowledging that they're targeting journalists, saying yes because they're enemies.
hmm I mean, I really think the carnage in Gaza has gotten a lot of international press attention. I mean, I think that for sure it has. But uh,
How is that affecting the American voters, though?
well, I think yeah, that's the question. I mean, I don't really think that it's an issue that most people are voting on. I don't know that that's going to be the issue that they
Well,
cast their ballot on.
I've heard something like this, uh, and that is that they're still just getting what they deserved,
Mm.
from their outbreak uh, a year or
On
so.
October 7th. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then
Mhm.
that's sort of kind of a shrugging of the shoulders. They're just still, that's still just being played out. Uh,
Right. Right.
until Hamas surrenders.
hmm hmm
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, well, certainly I think that's a perspective. I do think that it's probably dampened support though among young people for the Democrats, and I do think that it's going to have impacts in Michigan, in terms of, but I don't know if that impact is going to be sizable enough to turn Michigan to Trump, but it could have impacts there, you know. And so, that's the thing about an election that's so on the margins, right? That any of these things could tip the scales one way or the other. And that's why you said at the beginning, you said anybody who's trying to predict how this election is going to turn out is really just blowing smoke, really, because there's way too many of it's way too razor. It's on a razor's edge already, and then there's always these constant variables happening. So I mean, I don't feel like I know how it's going to turn out at all. I think it's completely
well,
up in the air
I
as far as I'm
I
concerned.
I don't know how it would turn out. I can't. It would be difficult to predict how it would turn out, no matter which candidate is elected. I mean, in other words, one way is it's unpredictable. Well, both ways it's unpredictable
You mean the Middle East?
because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
both going to continue to support Israel pretty much as business as usual, to one degree or another.
But I don't think Trump is going to try to impose any sorts of guardrails on Netanyahu. And I think the Democrats have
And
been
and
to
then,
some
well,
extent.
I mean, he won't try to. The Democrats may try to, but unsuccessfully. So the net result will be the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And well, yeah, I don't, I do think that there is a fatigue with the Middle East among just regular folk, probably. Like you say, it's been going on forever and it'll never be solved. I think a lot of people are in that position, but I do think that there's at least some people who recognize that it's entered another phase and that you really need a deft political operator to keep it from rolling over into a real conflagration and potentially involving nuclear weapons. And so that's the piece where I think that having Trump in office would be really dangerous because I don't think he's got those skills. So that's my feeling.
Well, I I agree, and nor do I think Harris does either.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think her ability to really stand up to Netanyahu, I don't think she would be anywhere near as successful as Obama was.
Mm-hmm.
He did, in fact, stand up and limited armaments to Israel, at least for a while, and under some conditions. I forget what they were.
Right.
But I just I don't see an end to it given current politics under either side, and I only see it as becoming increasingly dangerous, and that's why, you know, it gets back to what can be done.
That's my question. Do
Okay.
you have an answer?
Well, I don't know that I have an answer, but I do have a policy.
All right.
I do have a
Of course you
policy,
do.
and the policy is this, and it has to do with the last time that I was in Israel. I was there with my son, and we were there in 19, and we were photographing all of the various sites that are included in the Book of the Way.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there, and on the last day or near the end of our trip there, as we had worked our way around the country, we left Jerusalem and went down around behind the wall, the Great Wall that comes up along through Israel, and we went down into Jericho,
Mm,
and we went there, and what we saw there was just really a great deal of just poverty,
mm,
hopelessness,
mm.
and it just, and just there's just sort of a listlessness, and as we drove through, the two of us, as Anglo as we looked, probably uh, as Israeli operatives, I would suspect, they might think,
Probably.
looking for the most ancient walls as we were driving along in our rented car. But later, as we left, and as I flew out of Israel and I looked back down at this country, one part of it is this great, metropolitan, advanced nation, offering all of these advanced opportunities for its young people, this richness of its culture that's established there. And then on the other side of the divide, on the other side of the wall, that has been occupied since this war of aggression in 1967. And that is just a truism. And it's
Mm.
not only being occupied, but it's being colonized even further, and that
Yeah, with the
and so
settlements.
there has to be
Mhm.
an answer to that. And the answer that occurred to me at that time was that Israel needed to have a constitution, because
Huh.
Israel
Okay.
itself does not have a constitution. And if there is to be a coexisting nation of Palestine, a coexisting remnant of the Palestinian nation that existed at the time of the Zionist movement into it and colonization of it. That there be a recognition of constitutional law, because
Hmm.
that's what is missing there, because Israel is operating without law in a way. It operates under English uh, uh, uh,
It's an
common
English legal
law.
system?
It has the English, it inherited the English common law system, also without a written constitution,
Just like England doesn't
just
have.
like England doesn't have one, but it also doesn't have, but on a day-to-day operating basis, it operates under martial law that
Hmm.
it inherited from England's mandate and military occupation and supervision of the country. And so it still has all of those laws are still in existence, and that's how they're able to jail people and to lock people up, and to do and to act the way that they do without regard to a constitution, because there is no constitution
Hmm.
protecting the rights of either. But but
Huh.
but to take this one step further back, which I think we have to, because what I proposed was that there be a children's constitutional concept for this land, that it not be for the people of Israel or the people of Palestine, but that it be for the children of those countries to be recognized under the ancient Abraham covenant. And the
Huh.
ancient Abraham covenant that unifies them all together was that when Abraham, under the ancient story,
Yeah.
as Abraham wanders down from Iraq, where he's from, he wanders down through Syria and he finally makes it down to Jerusalem, and he helps a relative recover some of his booty that has been taken, and he stops at Jerusalem and offers up tribute to the king there of Melchizedek, who is the king of justice, and
Hmm.
and he is then allowed, and he offers tribute to the king there, and he's allowed to sojourn in the land so long as he lives in righteousness and justice.
Hmm.
That's the story of, of,
Hmm.
of the Bible, in a way, is the search for righteousness and justice. And so if we go back to that original covenant, that is the covenant of the children, that they then have a right to have a written constitution outlining clearly what their rights are. And that would be what I would offer, were I to try to mediate what is taking place there today.
That's really cool. And I like the fact that it goes back to the origin story
Well,
of those
but
lands.
you also have to have something concrete, because you have to imagine that there be a great highway that connects Gaza, that goes all the way around, and it goes all the way around through where Bethlehem is, and it cuts back around through, and it goes up and it cuts through Jericho, and it goes up and it connects the West Bank all the way back up, and connects it back up to Lebanon, and as the great highway that once existed there, and then that it be patrolled by three-person members, like a UN
A
member,
tripartite thing. Uh-huh.
an Israeli and a Palestinian, and three people patrols, but it'd be opened up, so that the West Bank, the Palestinian, the people of Palestine have an equal opportunity as well to share in the bounty of the land. Um,
You know what I love there for?
Anything short of an atomic war, because then it's all over. That's it. I mean, those are the kind of options there are. We have to think about something new and different. as well. Uh,
Yeah, I just loved that for a moment when you talked about the highway, because like what if, and I've never done this when I've thought about Israel, which I think is so interesting, all these years hearing about the Middle East, to actually just for a moment imagine if there was peace, and what would be possible in this country, if there was peace, and there was a coming together, and there was a cessation of hostilities, and there was a true constitution in place where people had equal rights. What could the country be? And it could be such a fascinating, like, melting pot of cultures and histories, and what would it be like to be there, to be able to like actually experience the entirety of Israel and all of its like majesty in terms of all of its religions, and to have it really be, yes, the homeland for the Jewish people that the Jewish people need and deserve, but also the homeland for others. This concept of like a totally different Israel from the one that we think of, those of us who've been living through the last several decades of what it's been, and I just love that, just having a moment to even consider that. Because I actually have never, until you said that just now, I never even thought of that.
well, I
That's just that how ingrained it is to think about Israel as like this place in perpetual, like perpetual war, like, in perpetual martial law and war, as you've mentioned. I mean, that's what it's kind of been like, even when they aren't firing something. It's just like this stasis of war.
well, I've imagined that almost from the first time I went to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been to Israel 5 times, uh,
Mm.
or so, but I've always imagined that Gaza be connected with the West Bank,
Mm-hmm.
and that the West Bank be connected all the way up to Lebanon through the Golan Heights. That there be that connection of the Palestinian people, that they still have a remnant and a territorial integrity there of their own, that allows Israel to continue to exist, but hopefully as a constitutional nation.
But I'm even going beyond the connection to like actual peace and actual coexistence, and what type of country it could be with that, you
Well,
know.
it's an incredibly rich country. I
Yeah.
mean, the areas, excuse me, that we photographed were all the way from the caves along the
Mm.
coast, all the way up Mount Carmel, where these are caves where you have remnants of both a Homo sapien and Neanderthal in the same caves.
Wow.
It's along the highway. If you're coming out of Africa along the coast, this is the plain that you would come along, and these are the caves, that were in existence, at that far distance in the past. Or if you go over to Jericho, and you can stand there and you can look down in the digs at the most ancient walls that are there. And this is the most ancient wall city that we've found on Earth
Mm.
anywhere. This is the great Neolithic revolution that was taking place, where we were beginning to build cities and to organize ourselves that way. And so that's what Israel is all about. It's the crossroad between Asia and Africa. It really is, and it's a wonderful, marvelous place,
Hmm.
and it is currently occupied by dynamic, industrious people. Uh, I mean, there are those who like to say that there was nothing there before the Israelis came. That's not true at all. There was a bustling society there, Palestinian society, in existence,
Right.
with vibrant cities, with all of the everything any other city had on earth at that time.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
that's a truism, and that they both have to come to have an existence in the future, and to come to be at peace with one another. And I think that can be done if they both, again, look to their roots. you know, and look
hmm
at what they have in common instead of what they have and the differences.
Yeah. And
That's
basically,
always the story, isn't it, Joanne?
yeah, of course it
We can
is.
adopt that as a universal policy to every problem that we discuss, you
Yeah. And also, I mean,
know.
the common ground piece, but also just, I mean, the common interest in the fact that like what the way that it's going isn't going to leave anybody in any kind of decent position, the Israelis included. I mean, like it's a road to nowhere, and so that's kind of where I think there's that, and I actually think the Israeli people, not the government, but the people see that. It seems like they do. I mean, in terms of those the protests that have gone on, the sorts of criticism of the Netanyahu government that's been levied, especially even before this whole thing started with what he was trying to do with the judicial system. It feels like the Israeli people have this awareness on a certain level that you're talking about of the
Well,
need to, the common interest in. I think they're sick of it all. That's what a sense I get.
well, you have two things going on. One is that prior to the outbreak, you had these massive demonstrations against the government's attempts to eliminate the power of the Supreme Court to review legislation,
Mm-hmm.
statutes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and which would really empower the government really under a parliamentarian system to have all power within the government, and you had massive demonstrations about that. And now then, and since the outbreak, there have been again massive demonstrations seeking to release hostages. To
Oh yeah.
why are you insisting on this, battling all the way to the final dead hostage, you know, uh, which seems to be what's going on.
Yeah, it seems to be the tactic that they're using. I mean, well,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
this has been his intent. I in one of my research early on, before all of this happened, I have quotes of Netanyahu early on before 9/11 saying, we will find the ways to really hit them hard, the Arabs, and to hit them hard, and someone in the audience said, but won't they say that we're trying to colonize? No, nobody will stand in our way. We will hit them hard, and we will keep hitting them hard. And that's what is going on. They're just going to just keep hammering it until there is nothing left of Gaza. I don't know I
I
don't
don't think,
I don't see what
honestly,
they're I can't see an end game other than a total obliteration. They seem to be pushing them and hurting them into Egypt. That's
but
basically.
Egypt is saying, Egypt is like, no.
But they're
Yeah.
just really just putting up tents, and they're out there in tents, and now they're just going in bombing tents, you know, because they have no
Yeah,
other
no,
targets.
it's completely reprehensible, that piece of, I mean, well, the pictures of Gaza, I mean, it doesn't look like there's anything left now anyway. I mean, like it looks like I mean, it just looks like it's leveled, completely leveled with the pictures of the place. I don't even know how you'd begin to rebuild um that I mean, so it is it is clearly a policy on their side,
Well,
to do
I
this.
think that that certainly is something that the president has a great deal of control over. That is the sale of military weaponry to Israel.
Hmm.
The president can not only stop future sales, he can stop sales that are in progress and just impound, the money and turn around the sales. That is a part of the power of the executive today,
Oh yeah.
and
No,
and that's
it's
and
clear they
that's
have that power and they don't want to use it. It's clear. And I wonder if after the election's over, if the Democrats do get back in, if once the election's over, that leverage is used more explicitly, because I feel like a lot of the reason why they've been so careful with it is because of the thought of how that's going to impact the election, frankly.
Well, yeah, but the powers, behind it that are still, the whole thing is that we're still buying a lot. We're placing orders for all of this military weaponry that we're
Mm-hmm.
sending to Israel, that we're sending to Ukraine. That
Mm-hmm.
that military complex is certainly putting all of their efforts into this election, one way or the
Oh,
other.
I
And
I mean, have they ever not though? I mean,
yeah,
is it?
but
I
I wonder where their money is going. It seems like maybe Silicon Valley is sort of embracing some of Trump.
mm-hmm.
Do they think that there's going to be some reward there? I'm not sure what they think.
Is it? It's really that I think that I mean, if we want to shift to a couple other points before we
Yeah,
conclude, because I'm not sure. Um, I mean, in terms of the money piece of things, I think it's really interesting because Kamala Harris has raised, unprecedented amounts of money in this election, and she still could lose. And so money is a huge part of, you know, running a presidential campaign, no question, but it's not everything. I mean, it's she's out. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, on that side of things, it's kind of absolutely incredible how much the Democrats have raised over the last few months since she was declared the candidate. It's really incredible, and it still may not matter.
and a lot of small and a high percentage of small donors.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, again, it gets back to my long running beef with the Electoral College because, you can have, I mean, I do think that there is, in some ways, some of us who are not in swing states, the way we actually really vote, I mean, and I have voted officially, as I mentioned earlier, but the way that we really vote in terms of at least the presidential election is with our pocketbooks and donating money, because it feels like your vote, if you're not in a swing state, it's kind of set what's going to happen in your state in terms of the presidential election. It really is. I mean, like,
But
so
I saw
really
something.
it's about how much, it's about how, if you're voting as well with your donation.
Yeah, but
Sorry. I think
what's a
it's true.
yeah, but what's a swing state? I saw that Texas is like borderline the percentages in terms of the presidential election, and with the Senate election coming up.
Well, the Senate election, yeah, because Ted Cruz is who
Yeah,
Ted Cruz is, and but in terms of the presidential, I think that might be. I mean, certainly it's something the Democrats should work on in the future to try to turn Texas into a swing state, because then things would be over for the
well,
Republicans for sure. But
I was just wondering in terms of Texas. I'm from Texas, but
mhm.
you really still have the large state cities. You still have Austin, Dallas,
Houston,
Houston, these large cities, large populations that could turn a presidential election. Um,
that would be fascinating if
Democrat.
that happened. That would be really like
Who was the last president they elected? Was it a Democrat?
LBJ.
Well, it could have been LBJ because he was certainly the favorite son. But Clinton, did Clinton, or no, yeah, did
I don't
Clinton
think so.
carry Texas?
I
Or,
don't
or
think so.
did, or Carter?
Obama didn't.
Carter may have carried Texas.
Okay.
One did. It may have been Carter. Carter may have carried Texas.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
The last
That's a
of the
long time
old South.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did you see? I mean, I just to get back to how we started with the joy of voting. That Carter cast his vote. He got to cast his vote in this election.
oh, he did. Well, good
Yeah, he's
for him.
100 years old. He got to cast his vote. For Kamala Harris. It's kind of Jimmy Carter is one of my heroes. I just think he's incredible. Just an
Well,
incredible human. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I have up right on the shelf, right above your head, are several envelopes of where I had sent communications to Jimmy Carter, and you get them back with his handwritten notes on your letter. He replies to your letter on your letter.
Do you actually have
Yes, I have those.
you
I have
have
two
you
of
have
them.
letters that Jimmy Carter
Yeah, did
like
that.
hand wrote?
Yes. His
That's
response in the
crazy.
margin, his
On the
margin.
margin, just saying
Yeah.
president.
He's just such a gentleman.
Wow. Wow, that is special. I hope you frame that. No, and if it's not framed already, it should be.
No, it's in an envelope stuck up between a couple of books. I know where
Wow.
it is though.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. Oh my goodness. Well, I wanted to just make one more note about one other thing that happened this week. I just feel like, to me as somebody who works in the media, I just had to note this little kerfuffle. I don't It's more than little kerfuffle with LA Times and Washington Post about the fact that their editorial boards did not were I mean their publishers prevented the editorial boards from actually making an endorsement in the
Yeah,
presidential race, which I found is was a real gut punch in terms of the media and the role of the media as not just reporters but also the opinion side of the media, which is like it's maybe a misunderstanding, maybe a lack of understanding of the importance of the media, and not just in terms of reporting things objectively but also as digesters of what has gone on, and providing an opinion and analysis and a reason, not just I have this opinion, but actually substantiating why I have this opinion, which is something that I think is becoming a lost art, because people these days, it's just like, well, I just have this opinion. Well, why do you think that way? It's just, well, because I want to, this sort of like crude dialogue.
I,
Whereas the
I
opinion pages are about, yes, you have an opinion, but you make a persuasive argument about it. And that's a whole other like side to the role of the media. And it was just, now that we have billionaires who own newspapers or as publishers, they get to basically silence that,
and they
and
have.
it's really alarming
Yes, it
and
is.
sad.
Yeah. I once had a dream that I could own my own newspaper because I love the concept of a newspaper, a daily newspaper, the
Yeah.
whole business of doing it. But today it's all business.
Oh, I still have this, like, can I just share? I just have this thing, like, when I retire, like I want to go live in a little, not a little town, but like, nothing more than a mid-sized town, and like work at a newspaper. Just it's my retirement job, just for fun,
Oh,
just for shits
really?
and grins.
Well,
Yeah. And like I just not because at that point it's not about how much money, even, it's not like I need to support myself on it or something, because I think journalism is an amazing and super critical, like, part of society. I mean, like, for society to function, so yeah. So that I still have that. I believe the news media is waxing and waning, though. I mean, I think that basically there's a lot of people who see, or now as the news media creators and everything, understanding that there isn't a really important role it has, like,
yeah.
so there's a lot
Well,
of
it's
initiatives.
it's essential, really, to a free society that we have information, and
Hmm.
that and in a way, information in a free society and in a capitalistic society, free market
Hmm.
society, is delivered by sources that have something to gain from having you watch them, whether it's through advertising or for whatever reason. But it's something that works.
Right.
It should
Yeah.
work. Uh,
Yeah, it should. Well, I think it will rise again. I do, because it has there is a necessity for it, and there's a role for it. So I do feel like it may take different forms, but I think it will. Um, but hopefully those who are in the business of newspaper, like, to understand the role of the newspaper. That's the problem, is we have people who are in the business of publishing who aren't newspaper people. I mean, Jeff Bezos is the one who owns Washington Post. It's he's the one who doesn't want them to have their endorsement. This guy who owns what LA Times, this billionaire guy, they don't have a concept of what journalism is. So that's the problem. Because you used to have even Hearst, way back in the day, yellow journalism and everything else. I mean, I think he was still a newspaper man. Like these people aren't even newspaper people; they're just billionaires.
Right. Opinionless billionaires.
Opinionless. Well, they have an opinion, but they don't. They knew their editorial boards were going to take a different opinion. Is the problem? So yeah. Well, William.
Yes, my dear.
Well, I think we've
Here we are again.
Here we are again. We're a little over a week out, so what can we say except everybody hold on to your seats.
Well,
and vote. Please vote.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. Instead of having anything else to say, is the most important thing that we have as the evidence of our consent to be governed is our vote. That's the evidence of it. And if you don't vote, then you're really not consenting to be governed, and you're going to accept whatever government gets offered to you.
Mm-hmm.
And your consent to be governed, it doesn't have to be taken for granted, as we've often said at the end of this, is that it's conditional, and that we don't have to have a revolution to change the kind of the way our government works.
That's the beauty of our Constitution.
Under our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Voters' Bill of Rights is all about. Go to thevoters.io for more information about that. And
perfect.
Anyway, folks, cheers to the people.
Cheers to the people. May your consent to be governed never be taken for granted.
That's right. And
go vote, folks.
And in addition, ask every candidate for every elected office, do you support our Voters'
Bill of Rights?
Yes. And here's to you. And what does the yellow or the gold stripe on our flag represent? The people of the United States.
Cheers, William.
Good night.
Good night.